I don't understand this. Everyone is protecting Sarek, his wife, Mendrozin, even you.
What will you have me do? March down there and destroy the man?
The mission with the Legarans cannot be carried out with Sarek in this condition.
I know that.
Then tell him that there is no way!
Don't you tell me what to do!
Captain, Commander.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Fully Functional, a TNG podcast. I'm Maggie, joined by Jeff and Dory.
Yep.
Jeff and I are huge Star Trek nerds. Dory's a Star Trek novice, and we are taking her on her first journey through Star Trek The Next Generation. Today we'll be discussing the Season 3 episode Sarek, original air date May 12th, 1990. And as always, we'll take it to Dory for the recap.
Okay. Bear with me. This is going to be a long one. All right. So the Enterprise is going to be hosting a meeting between the Federation and a mysterious race known as the Legarans.
Who will remain mysterious.
Yeah. So they're orbiting Vulcan to pick up Federation Ambassador Sarek and his wife, Perrin, who they want to make sure we know is from Earth, like his first wife. Thanks, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why they made the choice to keep that line in the script, because I don't...
Maybe they're like, they want people to know Sarek has a type.
It could be because you can't see her ears because of her very original series outfit.
Yeah, they're in these like robes and shit. So, okay, Picard and Riker are dressed in their fancy uniforms to go greet them. And, oh boy, Picard is fanboying hard. Mm-hmm. He is so pumped for this. Apparently, he met at Sarek's son's wedding. Okay.
Yeah,
thanks,
it doesn't specify which son. However, the only son that we know about for sure at this point is Spock. So it's...
Wait, what about
Spock's dad?
Oh, wait, no, You're right. There's the other half son, but like...
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you not? I thought we told you that he's Spock's dad.
Maybe you did, and I just don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, he does say Spock later, but like, okay,
yeah.
That makes sense. Then.
And his character, Sarek, was in the original series.
That I do remember you telling me.
Yeah. So this is like a big deal to see him in.
Is this the same actor playing
the role?
It is.
As a little background corner sidetrack, just before we get into the rest of it, there was a lot of reluctance to bring a character from the original series into the show, partially from the writers and partially from Gene Roddenberry, who really didn't want this to... He wanted the show to stand on its own as much as it could, because keeping in mind, the original series movies were still being made at this point. One of them had just come out like a year and a half before this and was a real big bomb, so that was a bit of an issue as well. Maybe it was a year before this, I don't know. It came out in 88 or 89. So yeah, they weren't really sure what was happening with the rest of the original series legacy at this point, but this show was starting to do quite well at this point, so they wanted to kind of keep things separated if they could, but the person who wrote the script came up with a real good idea and really wanted to include this character, and actually went to Roddenberry about it, and Roddenberry said, okay, well, write me 2 versions of the script, one with like an original new character and one with Sarek. And after looking at both of them, they ended up deciding Sarek is the way to go. This really does add to the story. It adds to his legacy, and it adds to the Star Trek universe really well. And hey, I think they pulled that off too. So yeah, there we go. There's your little background corner stuff.
Okay, so this is Sarek's last mission, because then he's retiring afterwards. So we meet his entourage. We meet Ki Mendrozin. I wrote his name phonetically because in the subtitles it's spelled Ki, but I wrote Ki beside it. Haha, good job me. He's Sarek's chief of staff. And then we meet Saketh, who is Sarek's personal assistant. And they're like, listen, Sarek is like old and he should just go to his room. We're not doing any like activities, and or events, we're just gonna like take Sarek to his room and he's just gonna hang out there until we have the meeting. And then Picard's like, but we did like a Mozart concert prepared for him. They're like, well, too bad, so sad. So then Sarek and Perrin, his wife, come aboard, and Sarek's like, I want to see the conference room, and everybody else is just kind of like, or you could go to your quarters, but Sarek's like, no, the conference room it is.
Yeah, you could cut the awkwardness in that scene pretty well.
Yeah. Then we have like then we cut to, I guess, the conference room where like Geordi and Wes are preparing this like green and red bubble bath thing for the Ligarans. I don't know. Apparently it smells.
I mean, it's not even actually green and red. Those are just the overhead lights.
Oh, whatever.
Well, I think the
It made me think of
Ligarans
Jell-O.
like, live in hot goo.
Ew. I think they call it a slime pit or something.
Yeah, later
something
on
like
they
that.
say that it reached 150 degrees Celsius, and yet there's absolutely
Ew.
no steam. And I'm like, okay.
That's so gross. Yeah. Oh, and so but we do find out Wes has a date with Ensign Suzanne Dumont, which Geordi is like, damn, Wes, I didn't. That's like a shocker. And Wes is like, oh, why? Because like you don't think she'd go out with me? And Geordi's like, well, no, I didn't think you'd ask her.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, shade to Wesley. So Sarek enters the conference room. It is not to his standards. He's like, it's too bright, and it's like this blue, and I'm like, okay, well, that's questionable. So Sarek is like real old. We learn 202 years old, and he's been working for like 93 years in preparation for this meeting, which like honestly, what a bummer to spend 93 years preparing for one single event. Sorry, that's like a huge bummer.
I mean, that was kind of a exaggeration. It's not that he's been preparing for the one single specific event. It's that this is like his magnum opus.
Yeah, it's that his career has led up to this moment.
And what a bummer this moment was.
Yeah, fair.
Because everyone's acting like your grandpa asked to drive.
So then but then Picard decides, oh, concert's gonna go on anyways because there's no reason why we shouldn't enjoy it or whatever. Oh, Perrin is like, Picard goes to Perrin to be like, oh, we're like want to invite you to the concert, and she's like, oh, I don't think he'd be like interested. He's like tired, blah blah blah. And then he's like, Picard, my husband's been like paying attention to your career, and he finds it to be satisfactory. In which I was like, lol. But then I remembered this is like Vulcan, and I guess that's like a really high compliment, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then it seems minor, but in the long run, this is important. Sarek can't meditate. And I just was like, I guess that's why everybody wants him to be like left alone because he can't meditate. Nope, that's not it.
Yep.
So then cut to Wes and Geordi again back in the conference room. And tensions turn real quick, real sour, real rough. This was truly, I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? I rewatched this scene like 3 times to be like, wait, what the fuck? So I'll read it out. So Wes goes, is that it? Can I get out of here now? And then Geordi goes, what's your hurry? You don't really think anything's going to happen with Suzanne Dumont, do you? And then Wes goes, at least I'm not spending the night with a good book like some people.
Yeah.
And then Geordi's like, what's that supposed to mean? And then Wes goes, just what it sounds like. Geordi goes, let me tell you something. You get more action out of a good book than you'll ever see from this date. I guarantee it. She's not going to waste her time on someone like you. And then Wes goes, someone like me? And then Geordi goes, she's way out of your league. And then Wes goes, since when did you become an expert on women? And then Geordi goes, compared to you, every male on this ship is an expert on women. And then Wes goes, well, at least I didn't have to find my women in a holodeck. And then Geordi goes, what did you say? And Wes goes, you heard me. I was dying.
Yeah.
Okay.
This whole bit is real funny.
It's a lot. Then Riker comes in and is like, what the fuck's happening? Why is there like weird tension? And then we find out that Worf has put this somebody named Ensign D'Amato on report for subordination. And Riker tells to Picard, like, they're apparently good at their job. So, like, Picard's like, Riker, look into it. And so now we're at the concert. Data is the featured soloist, and he can play the violin in, like, any style of, like, 300 violinists or whatever. So he gives some options. Perrin and Sarek pick one. Yeah. And then I don't know, all of it sounds the same to me. I don't have like the ear for like different styles of violin, but I do find that the concert group is like, it's not funny, but I found it a little funny that it's just, also I don't know a ton about music, so like this could also be a totally normal combo, but I just find it funny. It's like 3 violinists and a cello. I don't know why, but that just was like, huh, okay.
I think that's normal. I think it's like a string quartet or whatever.
Yeah, it probably is, but just, I don't know. Just like...
Yeah, the whole Data thing, it's like, I don't even know if the person she picked is a real person, because, like, I mean, I don't know, like, violinists, so I assume they did the Star Trek thing where they put in, like, a couple real people and a couple, like, made-up ones.
Oh, yeah, so that means that, like, Sarek and Perrin came to the concert anyway. So, like, the music's playing, it's, like, nice, whatever. Sacketh, like, does, like, this creepy lean forward and turns to the side to look at Sarek, and, like, Sarek is crying. And it's like, okay, that... Everybody else seems very alarmed by this, and by everybody else, I mean just Troy and Picard.
Well, nobody else really notices.
Yeah. Dr. C is sitting between Troy and Picard and does not notice a single thing's going on. Yeah, so then, like, Sarek leaves, and the concert continues, whatever. So now, honestly, the confrontations in this episode were hilarious. Mm-hmm. So now we're in Dr. C's, like, office or whatever. We're in sick bay. And Wes comes by and she's like, why weren't you at the concert? And he's like, oh, it wasn't, like, mandatory. And, like, Suzanne wanted to go to the Arboretum or whatever. And she's like, that made me look bad. And he's like, chill, what the fuck? And then she's like, this is, like, don't... It gets, like, intense, and she's like, don't talk back to me. And then he's like, get away, like, where... Oh no, he's like, starts to leave, and she's like, where are you going? And he's like, away from you. And then she slaps him.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my god, what the fuck?
And I know, like,
that was so intense.
Yeah, I know this is like the early 90s, so like hitting your kid was like not okay, but it wasn't like... It wasn't as not okay as it is now. So I feel like if this was today, they would have made a much bigger deal about him hitting him.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was like, that's shocking.
Yeah.
Also, I never would have thought of Dr. C to, like, do anything like that.
Yeah. Also, we never get to see Wesley's reaction.
Oh, yeah, it just immediately cuts away from it. I mean, it is such a ridiculous thing to happen. Mm-hmm. So, like, the fact that she is immediately calling herself out on it is like, okay, yeah, that's fair. I understand the choice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so then, like, the next scene, Dr. C goes to talk to Troy about what happened, and Troy reveals that there's been, like, there's already been, like, 10 other situations like this in the last 2 days, which is interesting. So, like, then Data gives Sacketh, the assistant, a tour of the bridge, and he asks some, like, sketchy questions. I guess, like, I think about, like, Picard's, like, ability to be able to negotiate or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's really weird. It does have a point, though. Then, okay. And then we're in 10 forward. And O'Brien and some guys, like, leave a table, I guess, to get a drink, and then they come back and there's, like, other guys. And then there's, like, they start a whole fight because they couldn't sit at any other table. Yeah. It felt so high school. Just a bunch of grown-ass men being like, that's my table. Yeah. That's my table.
And especially because, like, it's like Geordi comes up and it's like, oh, well, like, there's plenty of other tables. And it's like, there are.
Like, you guys, yeah. And then, so Riker is like, So like there's like Riker and Worf are talking, and then they like enter 10 forward, and it's a full out brawl.
Yeah.
You know, it's all fun and games until Riker gets punched in the face. And okay, so then like Dr. C and Troy, they've sort of realized that all this violence and all these like confrontations and shit has started when Sarek got on the ship.
The ship.
And
Shit's ahoy.
Troy felt some like bad vibes from at the concert, that like there was something really off and weird. And Dr. C says there is a rare condition that affects Vulcans over the age of 200. That sounds very familiar. And it's called the Bendai syndrome. And early symptoms include sudden bursts of emotion. Most irrational anger and sudden I'm writing the same thing over and over. Cool. I fucked up when I wrote this quote. Yeah, and then eventually all emotional control is lost. So it sounds very much like Sarek has this, and Saketh may be like... Oh no, so Sarek, because of this, he is unintentionally projecting like his symptoms of his, of his disease onto everybody else.
Bendai syndrome, not to be confused with Bandai syndrome, which is an overabundance of collecting Gundam models.
Boo.
Boo. That's terrible.
Thank you.
So, okay. Then they were like, hey, could the Ligarians be affected when they come on board? And Picard's like, we'll be there in 12 hours. So immediately I'm like, oh boy, that means truly nothing, but I'm excited.
Yeah, 12 hours in Star Trek time could be anywhere between like 5 episodes and like 30 seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. So the thing is, like, Dr. C can't really diagnose Sarek without doing this test, but the test will take a few days to show the results. So Picard, in the meantime, goes to confront the entourage, I guess, of like, listen, this is what seems to be the issue, and like Sarek can't really do the negotiations, but Key is like pulls that well, like, I'm not feeling the side effects, therefore it can't possibly exist. And it's like, go fuck yourself.
That guy's really smarmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's gross. So then Data confronts Saketh about Sarek's issues, and Saketh actually admits that he's been using like his psychic ability or whatever to like control his emotions, but it's like getting harder, I guess, and
which even Sarek doesn't really seem to be aware of, which is kind of
yeah.
That does place a interesting bit of contention on the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then Picard does some complaining about aging. Just like, same. Okay. So then, like, Picard's not really sure if, like, even Sarek knows the truth. So he thinks that they're all protecting him, and so he can just, like, do his shit. So then, like, then for a brief moment, Riker and Picard have a little confrontation because Riker's like, someone needs to confront him. Picard's like, yeah, I'm not really looking forward to doing that. And Riker's like, everyone's protecting Sarek, even you, Picard. Picard's like, oh, what? I'm supposed to be like, you're fucking up the entire Enterprise dynamics? Like, what? And then, like, Riker's like, the entire mission is, like, basically, like, toast with Sarek behaving this way. And then they start shouting, and we cut to Worf, who's like, who's like, if he knew the reference, would probably do that, you know, like, finger in the collar, like, pulling it aside, like, gesture.
If I have one criticism of this episode that I especially noticed in this scene, it's that every time that emotions are heating up, the, what do you call it? The low strings in the orchestra start going, and I'm just like, okay, guys, we get it. We know, but it would be more tense if you didn't have that musical sting, I think, because then you would have the awkward silence that comes with people being stopped from arguing.
Yeah. Yeah, so then, like, Data interrupts the, like, argument and is like, listen, you, like, that's fucking awkward. And Picard's like, yeah, I guess I should just go do that now. So Picard confronts Perrin, and then Sarek walks in. And Key is like, Picard, can I speak to you in private? And Picard is like, no. And Sarek's like, come at me. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm perfectly healthy. I can do whatever I want. I'm doing great. A++. And then Picard is like, hey, like, Saketh, like, admitted this shit. And yeah, he's like, yeah, I've been like micromanaging your emotions or whatever. And so then Sarek dismisses Saketh basically. And Picard, I wrote in my notes, Picard speaks with Sarek and he's like that change my mind meme. Because like Sarek is not interested in hearing this. He's like, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me, whatever. So yeah, Sarek's like, you encounter weird shit all the time, even though Picard's like, listen, the timing is like a little too convenient and we can do like the test, but like it'll take some time and we need to like do something because this is fucked up. And he's like, also you cried at the concert. And he's like, no, I didn't. And he's like, you did. I promise you. We all saw it. And he's like, okay, one tear. It's like, okay, no, that's like, you're full of shit.
Yeah, he's like, I saw the tears. And he's like, I recall only one tear. And it's like, so you were crying.
And then Picard goes, is it illogical for a Vulcan to cry? And then Sarek goes like, it was late. There's more to that line, but I just thought that's funny of like the response of like, it was late.
What a great excuse.
But that's not the full line.
Yeah.
So like Sarek like loses it. He's like shouting at Picard and screaming about it would be illogical and whatnot. So then finally Perrin admits that like, yeah, she kind of knew, but like they've been shielding this because this was his last mission and they wanted him to like go out with a bang and feeling good about it. So like his reputation wasn't destroyed. In my notes, I wrote, Perrin reveals that it was Agatha all along. Oh, that's so stupid. So then they're like, okay, what if we come up with this wild and crazy idea of a mind meld? Which I just wrote, that sounds very Star Trek. Yeah. So
yeah, the mind meld is an established thing by this point in Star Trek universe. So it's not, they didn't make it up for this episode.
Both in a silly way and in a very serious way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so from my understanding of this, like Sarek would like get the control of like Picard's control, and Picard would like get all the like anger and like loose emotions that Sarek has been experiencing.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so Dr. C basically like she supervises it. They sit at the conference table and so Sarek is able to do negotiations and whatever and be super calm, and he calls Riker number 1.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Picard is having straight out a bad time. He's like shouting and like Patrick Stewart was going for the Emmy in this scene.
Yeah.
He was thirsty for that Emmy. And then like Dr. C like comforts him. And at one point, okay, I'm assuming that because he yells out because Picard in his Sarek rage, I guess, says that he loves like Perrin, but he also loved Amanda. That was his first wife, I'm assuming.
That's right.
And that was
is that Spock's mom?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
she is actually shown in the original series, but since the original series takes place like 80 years before this, she is clearly not alive anymore.
Yeah, because Vulcans live way longer than humans.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it is an honestly fairly intense scene. I'm just like, this is like a roller coaster of emotion that I truly would love to get off any moment. Now it's not enjoyable.
Forgot how long that scene goes on.
Yeah, it's
really upsetting.
It's unnerving. And I think like they were clearly going for that, and I think that they pulled it off very successfully. But yeah, it is hard to watch. I felt some emotions.
Yeah.
Even I, a logical being like myself.
One who is ruled by facts and logic.
Precisely.
Yeah, so but like basically in the long run, like Sarek is fucked. The disease is like irreversible. But Saketh is like, he'll help with emotional control and whatever. And Picard reassures Perrin that like Sarek loved her, which I don't think was ever up for like a question from the start, because he always seemed pretty devoted to her. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's because Vulcans don't express emotions, so he probably never said it, so I guess Picard felt like he wanted to say it to her.
Yes.
And then we end off with a really nice send-off, which Picard goes, peace and long life. And Sarek goes, live long and prosper. And I think that might be my first live long and prosper.
I think it probably
Have they done it?
Maybe.
Because I don't think they've done it. There's been like a Vulcan or two on the show, but I don't remember if they've done it yet.
I don't think they have.
So I think this might have been my first proper live long and prosper, and it was really cute.
And from such an established character, I think that's a great way to experience it for the first time.
Yeah, but it was almost, it's not ruined, but in my head, so like, okay, Picard said peace and long life, and immediately my head like shot to these lyrics from the musical Fiddler on the Roof, where it's like, it's not, the lyric isn't like peace and long life, it's like, but it's something similar, and that's just what my head shot to. So I had that in my head, and then
sorry.
Oh, different song.
I know.
It's L'chaim, when they're like
both of the both
be
of
happy, be healthy, long life. And I was just like so then when he's like live long and prosper, I was like so I almost ruined it for myself.
both of them are established for use with that greeting / farewell in Star Trek lore. So it has been established before. I'm not really sure why they use both of them. Probably just so that one of them doesn't get overused as a catchphrase.
Well, I think
it was really
it's
nice though.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be like that's the established back and forth. It's like one person says live long and prosper, the other person says peace and long life.
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. I never really thought about it.
Yeah, I feel like in a mock time when they're meeting the
matriarch person.
Yeah, the matriarch person. I feel like that's the exchange that happens.
I think you could be right. It's been a while since I've seen that episode, but that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so for the record, just for a little bit of background for yourself, Dory. So as I mentioned, Sarek has been seen before. He is actually the main guest star of his appearance on the original series. As well as the actor has played other characters within Star Trek, especially the original series, where I think he played 2 other characters throughout it. But Sarek in the original series, his episode kind of focuses on his relationship with Spock, which is strained and distant. And it's interesting because the strain is caused by the fact that Spock decided to not entirely follow in his Vulcan heritage footsteps, but ended up joining Starfleet and whatnot, and he doesn't agree with that. And yet, Sarek is even by that point, a very well-established part of the Federation. So it's kind of weird that he didn't like that part of Spock's personality, but clearly, not personality, but his life choices. But it's clear that by this point, his respect for Starfleet officers has changed immensely, and that's it's interesting to have like a bit of character growth for him between series, because he has been seen a couple of other times.
Series.
He has been seen a couple of other times in the films by this point. I think he's been in 2 of them, but it was fairly brief. Like, he doesn't play a major part in them. They're bit parts.
Yeah. And the whole deal is that Spock is only half Vulcan also, because his mom was human. And yeah, I think what it is that, like, Sarek was hoping that Spock would go into something maybe more, like, diplomatic as opposed to, like,
military.
Yeah.
I think,
like,
that makes sense.
Like, on the ground, like, Starfleet kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Especially since in TOS, they definitely focus more on the fact that Starfleet is a military, because it's more based on like an actual boating ship, whereas here in TNG the line is a bit more blurred. Like, obviously they still make a lot of references to them being a military, but I mean they act a little bit less like one. Their duties seem to be more the duties seem to be less well established. Like, what do they actually do? Oh, they ferry people around a lot and deliver medical supplies to prevent plagues. Great, okay.
They basically just do whatever.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it's an excuse to have episodic television, and I get it. But what's really interesting about the writing of this episode, it was actually paralleled something going on behind the scenes, and it parallels something pretty sad going on right now, too, but I'll get to that in a moment. By this point, Michael Piller, who was the showrunner, had only been connected to Star Trek for a year, getting involved in the later part of the second season, and even he had begun to see the mental decline by this point of Gene Roddenberry, who was having issues and would sadly die within a few years of this, and he was not. He was a living legend among everyone. There were obviously problems with him, as I've gone into great detail about, but it was sad for them to all see this person that they had like look up to in creating this series and being so fundamental for it, and even interacting with on a daily basis for their work with the series. And they were seeing the decline in him there too. And so I don't know how much influence they took from that when they were writing it. I don't know how much connection this specific writer had to him, but surely the page one uncredited rewrite that the episode got from the very well established team of Ira Stephen Bear and Ronald D. Moore, whom I've mentioned before, that they would have seen it because they would have interacted with him a good deal by this point. So I think there's some unconscious paralleling there going on in the writing, and I thought that they did it really respectfully, so I quite appreciated that. But right now, there is a very similar problem going on with the veteran Star Trek actress Nichelle Nichols, who is currently suffering from dementia, and it is a real sad custody battle going on about her assets between a friend of hers, her son, and her manager. And there is some real complicated shit that I'm not going to get into because, to be honest, it is 100% a he said, she said thing at this point, and Nichelle Nichols is in absolutely no state to speak herself about it. However, just last year, she did a little kind of farewell tour, and similar to Sarek's, it was going to be like her like, hey, I'm not doing well, this is my big bang before I'm retiring for good thing. And luckily hers went off pretty well too. She didn't have any major problems during it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I know, like, you know, there's been some, you know, pretty serious accusations of, like, essentially, like, financial abuse and isolation and stuff.
Yes.
But it's unfortunate that also people with dementia can, you know, because of the confusion, like, see their caregivers as, like, people who are, like, against them.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But because of that, that also leaves them vulnerable to people actually taking advantage of them and stuff. So
yeah,
it's really hard to say what's going on.
It is a very complicated situation, and as I said, it's all he said, she said at this point, so there's really no way to know exactly what's going on and who's in the right. And I think that makes it even sadder because it means that people can't even give support to the right side. There's been separate fundraisers from different sides of the thing in order to raise money for for like custody battle sort of stuff. And like, I don't even know what is going on with it. And every time that new info comes out, it just fuels the argument even more. And honestly, nobody really knows what to make of it. They can just choose a side and say, well, I think this person's right because I don't know. Because they all have plausible stories, unfortunately, and that's where things get complex.
Yeah, and I think the thing people might not want to accept is that it boils down to it's really none of our business.
Yes, very true. Very true. And like when it does hit the news streams, it hits shit like TMZ, which is like, great, this is what we got to deal with, this shit. Oh, sorry, we live in Canada. TMZ. I hope that makes everybody feel slightly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think, though, like, I think most people, maybe not most, but a lot of people can relate to seeing a family member or someone that they highly respect going into a decline, like health-wise or mentally, and just like having a hard time dealing with that, like seeing that person like
Yeah.
no longer be the person you knew.
I really liked Picard's, well, fairly sad lament about the ravages of old age in what it is, because it's not anything that's under your control, obviously, and that's what makes it so sad and frightening and inevitable, unfortunately.
My single greatest fear is losing myself that way, like having dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that.
Yep.
Like to just fully not be aware of what's going on, not even be aware of who I am, like that scares the fucking shit out of me.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, when we're in that situation, we would experience confusion and fear, which is what they all feel when they're at that, well, most of them feel when they're at that point. My grandmother's actually going through something like this right now. I don't know exactly what she has, but it is fairly severe short-term memory loss. And it's starting to affect her long-term memory, but it's not really at a point where she's like forgetting who people that she's regularly interacting with are or anything like that. It's more so that she's, forgetting that a friend that she hasn't interacted with in 20 years because they died is somebody they haven't interacted with in 20 years because they died. And being like, oh yeah, I was talking to Sharon the other day. Mom, Sharon's been dead for 20 years. Oh, but I was just talking to her. You weren't. And you can listen to them tell their story at that point, and yeah, you can tell them that they're wrong, or you can humor them. But like either way, memories just keep slipping further and further away, and it doesn't get better.
Yeah, that's fucking terrifying.
It is.
Yep.
It is. It's similarly something I never want to experience.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned the podcast before. My grandfather, before he passed away, had Alzheimer's and dementia. Fun. And the last few years of his life were not fun. He didn't remember who any of us were, and he would like make up that he had roommates and had names for them, and we're like, what are you? Like, oh boy, this is... He would say, oh, they would owe him rent, and we're like, oh boy, nobody lives here except for you. Yeah, it just, from watching that happen to him over years, was just to like the point to like he had no idea who we were before. Like when he died, he had no idea who any of us were, and it just, for someone who's so significant part of your life, and just looking at you like they don't recognize you, because there's like that look when you recognize someone versus the blank look when you don't know somebody.
Yes.
And that blank look is a lot of what we got.
Yeah.
And
I know the episode doesn't bring the character to that point, obviously. But has anyone else experienced a point where they're not sure if something's wrong with the person in decline, like they were with this episode, and they're kind of in denial about it? Because I have definitely seen that with some people in the family who are just like, "Nah, she's fine, everything's good."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was gonna say like that's the exact reason why people how do I word this? It's the exact reason why people are like inclined to sort of deny that it's happening, because like admitting that like this person that you love and respect, like admitting that they have this condition is just so like
it makes it real.
Yeah, it makes it real
until you get some kind of formal diagnosis, or until like it's official, you can have plausible deniability, and
the implications are just so devastating.
Yes.
Yep.
Because it changes everything once you finally admit it, because that means now you have to come out with a plan for how to follow what you're going to do to help this person for the remainder of their life. Mm-hmm. And it involves like a very different type of interaction with them, and having to let go of connections that you have with them, that they won't be able to remember anymore by a certain point.
Mm-hmm. That's why I kind of think an interesting point I think of this episode was legacy, because they were so determined. Perrin and Saketh and Key were so determined that like this last mission go out on like a high note, so then like his legacy is set in stone of all the good shit he did, because they truly thought that this like one thing, his health declining in this, would like somehow diminish all the good that he's done over the years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
like that one tiny thing. And it truly like, that's something I kind of think about a lot, is legacy.
Yeah,
it's important to remember. It's important to remember, especially with Vulcans that we see on Star Trek, is despite being emotionless, they are fiercely proud. Mm-hmm. And it is definitely a racial trait that, like, it's more of a cultural trait than anything else. But I can't imagine having your own pride be such a handicap, allowing it to become such a handicap. And part of that is because I'm pretty introspective. I really like to look into myself and try to figure out why I'm doing things, what's wrong with what I'm doing, and admit mistakes when I'm doing them. But to be so impactful in the lives of others around you, and even in the society that you live in, like this character, and to have that pride blind you to your own health, like, that is really sad.
Also, I mean, in this case in particular, the entourage was willing to risk, I mean, this sort of, I guess, meeting and other people's, you know, what if it got worse? Like, what if the violence on the ship got worse?
Yep.
In order to preserve Sarek's pride, so he didn't know he was getting sick, and all of that, it could have put so much more at risk just for one person's pride.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Which is truly freaking wild.
They probably, like, I think they even said in the episode, they kind of just, you know, were deluding themselves. They probably convinced themselves that it really wasn't that bad.
Yeah, because it was a slow decline.
Yeah, and that, I think it's also, like, about, I mean, this is also a pride thing, but it's about that his career ended on his own terms, and it's not like he had to retire. It's like, oh, he did this, like, he had a career and he retired, and then, he, you know, his health declined. It's not, he had to retire because his health declined.
It shows, it would show like a noble soul more than an arrogant one, refusing to go out even when there are problems with it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is worth noting that this episode was written in 1990, so obviously the stigma around mental health, while much stigma still exists about it today, it was something that you essentially would not talk about and acknowledge to the same degree 30 years ago. So the episode does kind of call that out, which is good. But also the fact that this was going on with Gene Roddenberry at the same time, and Roddenberry was still making appearances at conventions and whatnot by this point, and he hadn't declined enough that there was like a horrible problem with it by the time that this episode came out, but it certainly would happen, and he would have convention appearances that were frankly kind of embarrassing towards the end there.
Yeah. And I was going to say, like, this kind of problem, because, like, the Bandy syndrome or whatever is essentially the Vulcan equivalent of, like, Alzheimer's.
Yes.
Or dementia. And having this condition is so personal.
Oh, yes.
And it can be embarrassing, you know, especially when people don't know what's going on. Something that given when it's written, I'm not surprised, but something that the episode doesn't really interrogate, which I wish they would, is like, why his health decline, like, why does that destroy your dignity? Like, why should that? It's really unfortunate that, because I think that's still true today, that it's seen as undignified to
Get old.
get old, yeah, but like sort of forget yourself and have dementia and whatever, because I feel like especially in overall US Canada kind of culture, we don't really value the elderly. It's
No,
like
that's very true.
they're kind of like, to our society in general, they kind of just get in the way. Like, that's how we view them, unfortunately. And when they become, quote unquote, even more of a burden, it's just like, ugh, really? We have to deal with this. We have to deal with you, like, not knowing where you are and that kind of shit. And it's fucking cruel, but that's like how society views it. And like, obviously I think that it shouldn't be that way. It just sucks.
We do indeed live in a society that
Yeah.
does not respect legacy as much as it respects current form.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because, like, we do definitely place an emphasis within society on like health and strength, and anything that is a detriment to that is looked down upon to a degree that it's geez, what's the word that I'm looking for? Because like obviously it's not undignified in anyone except the people who consider dignity to be health and strength, but like we look down on disability in general, any kind of disability, and that really isn't fair to the people who have that, because it's like there's this this unconscious desire to see disability as not a handicap, but as something that's deliberate.
Yeah.
And that isn't fair to anyone, obviously, because disability is almost never deliberate.
Yeah. And like, yeah, we see disabled people as disposable.
Yeah. Ugh.
Like when like in current times, with like someone from the CDC was saying,
In
like,
current _year.
yeah, with COVID and stuff, it's like, oh, the breakthrough cases, like the cases that, like, of COVID that happened in vaccinated people, they're like, oh, like only, what was it? Like only this small percentage of people died, and of that amount of people that died, like, I forget the actual numbers, but like something like 70% had 4 or more comorbidities. So this is good news. And it's like, is it though? Like,
Yeah.
people are still dying, and like just because they had comorbidities doesn't mean that it's all fine and dandy. Like, I understand that it's like, of the people that got COVID who were vaccinated, a very small percentage of them got really sick, and a very small percentage of those people died, and and most of those people, were sick anyway, which, I don't know, is still fucked up to say. Because, and I think a lot of people don't understand also what counts as a comorbidity.
Very true. Yep.
Because you know what counts as a comorbidity? Seasonal allergies.
Oh. Great.
ADHD, autism. Like,
Well, to be fair, this person died because they had hay fever.
yeah. It's like all these things, like fucking asthma, like all these things that are like kind of I hesitate to say this, but I have like no other things that are sort of everyday disabilities, I guess, is the way I could describe them. It's like, yeah, it's just fucked up, man. Because, like, we just don't view disabled people's lives as valuable, you know? And it's like...
Well, I mean, you're only valuable to society of what you can provide them.
Yeah, exactly. It's something I've had to investigate in my own self, too. Because, like, that's just kind of how you grow up. And you don't really realize, like, how little you value disabled people until you kind of examine it in yourself. Or, like, have someone point it out.
Yep. I mean, I've mentioned this before on the podcast. My father's deaf.
Mm-hmm.
And I've lived a lot of my life having to watch, like, him telling me stories and then seeing firsthand the way people treat him with just, like, a level where I experience a level of fury that, like, I would say for the most part, I'm a pretty, like, I don't want to say low key, but, like, I'm not someone who gets angry, like, really angry. I get frustrated. I have anxiety. I'd say I'm kind of high strung, but I'm not like I'm not high maintenance. I'm high strung, but I'm not high maintenance. Mm-hmm. But it does take a lot to get me angry. And there has been incidents where I sort of, like, lose... Like, I'm a pretty calm person, but then, like, there was an incident at Ground Zero that when I went to the World Trade Center with my family, like a decade ago. We were going through security. Me and my dad were separated from my brother and my mom, and we're going through the metal detectors. My dad can't go through a metal detector because he has a device called a cochlear implant, so he's got, like, a magnet in his head, so he has to get the wands. And he had his back. He had to take off his shoes, his jacket, his belt. It took me 5 seconds to go through. I'm fine, but because he has to be wanded, it takes a longer amount of time. And he had his back to the exit because he was putting his shoes on, and they had told me to go stand in this spot, and I was standing near these two security guards, and I'm waiting. My dad's putting on his shoes, and he's got his back to us, and he's bent over, and one of the security guards yells out, "Hey, you can't, you have to move, you can't sit there or stand there," or whatever. And my dad doesn't move because he can't hear him, and I'm, like, at this gate that I can't go back in. But the security guard then just turns, he keeps trying to yell at my dad, and I'm turning to be like, stop yelling at him. My dad stands up, he's, like, putting his belt back on, and then one of the security guards turns to the other goes, "What is this guy, some kind of idiot?" And he started, like, talking shit about my dad in front of me, and I just, like, something snapped in me, and I turned to them and I was like, "I hope you feel really good about yourself, because you're talking shit about a deaf man. He can't hear you. Why would you not go over to him and tell him he's in the way instead of just yelling shit at him and, like, talking shit about him right here?" And they just sort of, like, stared at me. And I felt it was, like, almost an out of a body experience of, like, the amount of anger that I felt in that moment of these guys just not willing to just see, like, why he's not responding, just calling at him a few times. And the thing is, like, I couldn't yell out to him because he, again, has his back towards me. He wouldn't have been able to hear me either. But instead of these guys being like, "Why isn't he responding?" to just start calling him, like, stupid. That's not anything. That's fucking messed up. So yeah. And I, like, seriously thought about, like, not telling my dad about any of that because my dad would have fucking lost it. These guys. And I was just so livid that, like, this is also, we're at ground zero, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
You would think there'd be some kind of, like, a little, like, you know, a little crumb of empathy of, like, where we are. So no.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, doesn't follow your exact instructions, or God, I don't even know. It's infuriating. And this is only one experience that I've had with my dad. And this was like, he didn't even know it was happening at the time. And so, like, if this was my frustration and anger with this one thing, I can't even imagine what bullshit other people have to go through. Because this is nothing. What happened at Ground Zero was nothing. Sorry, Ground Zero in this situation, not in general. Not in general. In my situation, it was like truly nothing compared to what people have to deal with, and that made me like absolutely livid at a level that I'd never experienced before in my life.
Mm-hmm. And that's so fucked up. And like that, I hear so many stories that are very similar to that. I mean, this goes off on a whole thing. I won't get into it, but especially involving cops and security and stuff like that, where it's like the person is deaf or has some other kind of disability that makes them like not able to understand or to respond to commands in the way they would want. And sometimes it literally has resulted in people fucking dying.
Yep. These people go on power trips and they have no ounce of empathy or understanding. Mm-hmm. And they don't fucking care. It's truly, it's funny. I was talking with my dad last week and he went to, met with this, he gets like these implant adjustments and whatever every few years, but he met up with these people to talk about what he thinks, because he's had his cochlear implant for like 20 years at this point, I think maybe more. And his input on what works, doesn't work, because he's had like a ton of different iterations over the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he was talking about led him to talk about like different apps that he has frustrations with. And it's things that like most people who this wouldn't think about. For example, my dad was asking me if I got a new phone recently, and he wants to get a new phone, and he was asking me if my phone alarm had a light, and I played around with it and it doesn't.
Oh.
And the thing that most people wouldn't think about, so as someone who is deaf, when he's completely unplugged, he's fully like nothing, hears absolutely nothing. So he needs an alarm, but it's not, sound doesn't mean anything. He needs a light flashing.
Yeah.
So on his old iPhone, they had an aspect where you could have a light flash as your alarm, and it would vibrate. So there would be like a feeling, and there'd be like a visual component, and that was something that really, really worked for him. But after we talked about this, I did some research. iPhones are the only ones that offer this light aspect for an alarm. If you want this, you have to download specific alarm apps, and then you can like make adjustments to like on the settings to put in a light, a flashing light, but you have to download an app for that. And all these other think of all the different kinds of phones that are out there, and I'm no iPhone advocate, mm-hmm. but they're the only ones who have this aspect, and it's such a minimal thing. And I do not believe for 1 second nobody has ever mentioned this to any other phone company, or like manufacturer, because I'm sure they get feedback all the time of ways that their service, their product could be better. But do they care? No.
Yeah.
Why would they?
Because it's such a tiny thing, but the fact that these phones don't have these, like have the option to do a light alarm is truly wild.
Yeah. And it is something that I wouldn't have thought of.
Yeah. Most people wouldn't. And to be fair, like I wouldn't have either until my dad mentioned it. So yeah, it's just like there's all these things that can be done, but companies and people choose not to because that would require them to do like one more step. Mm-hmm. It's fucking ridiculous at this point.
Yeah.
Like none of this is new.
Yeah.
None of this is like groundbreaking of like, oh, wow, there are people we need to accommodate and provide accessibility for. What? How did that? No, this has been a fucking thing forever.
Yeah.
It's it's not like it's people are asking for, crazy, huge. It's just all people are asking for is being able to participate in fucking life. Mm-hmm. Without having to run around to see, okay, can I get to this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Like, I think what I always think back to is the old streetcars in Toronto. Mm-hmm. how if you had any kind of mobility issue,
Oh, yeah.
good fucking luck getting on the streetcars, because you had to go up like 4 really steep steps, and the door was
Yeah.
wider at the front, and then it was like much narrower, like the farther you got on there. And the people who make that, like, those were around for how long?
40 years.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not like, oh, surprise, people with mobility issues just popped up, like,
It
in
just
the
popped
last
up
40
overnight.
years.
Yeah.
Like, how are people expected to, like, fucking get anywhere?
And
It's just,
most of the subway stations are still not accessible also.
Yes.
yep.
Like,
And half the time, like, escalators aren't working, and just like there's like a tiny bit of effort that could be put in, but it's not.
and especially like in a city like Toronto that was sort of like, it existed before the Victorian era, sort of, but like I feel like it really built up during the Victorian era.
Yeah,
So-
it did. We got our streetcars in the early 1900s, so yeah.
Yeah, so especially in a city that, like, you know, it sort of built up during that area, there are so many houses and businesses and stuff that have at least one step that you have to climb in order to get into them, which is like very inaccessible for wheelchair users. And for the businesses that like have more stairs and stuff, like inaccessible for people with mobility issues and things like that. But it just, thinking about it, what bothers me is like there's so many stores and stuff that have like just this little step that you could easily fix with like a tiny ramp, just so that like a wheelchair user can get up onto it. And the thing, like, people don't realize like how big a difference it makes. Like, so think about this. If you wear glasses, if you need glasses, you have a disability. Literally, you have a literal disability. But because your disability is accommodated, like because glasses and stuff, it's not really a thing you notice all that much, right? There's like slight difference in experiences with people who have to wear glasses and stuff versus people who don't need them, but it's not so much that it's like a huge detriment to your life. Now imagine if like other people's disabilities could be accommodated to the point where it's not a noticeable thing.
Plus, how is accommodating other people's disabilities a detriment to anybody else?
Yeah.
All it does is help people. There is no downside.
Yeah, and
Oh,
here's
it costs
the thing.
money.
The thing is like accommodations like fucking work for everyone. Like, it makes your life easier too, even if you don't need them. Right?
Yep. There truly is no downside, but people fucking suck. Mm-hmm. People just don't care unless they're directly affected.
Yeah. And so this isn't an accessibility disability issue. Like it might be, but like not something you'd think of it. But for whatever reason, this makes me think of when in Toronto the new subway cars were getting implemented. There was this article about it, and in the comments said like, oh, they should add to the announcements what side the doors are opening on, because different stations sometimes like the doors open on a different side because there's doors on both sides. Mm-hmm. And there was this huge argument in the comments of people being like, if you don't know what side the doors open on, you're fucking stupid. Like, why would you need that? Like, and it's like,
that's so stupid. Do people think that the only people who live here, like who use the subway, live here?
Yeah.
Number one, not only just so people know, it's for everybody, because like not everybody knows which stations have the middle platform or the side platforms. Like if you live outside of the city and you only take the subway sporadically, you're not going to know, which side do I get off at Lawrence West? Mm-hmm. Or what side do I get off at St. Andrew? Like, no, like people.
You're also like, I mean, I live here, but I also don't go to every part of the city every day, you know? And my whole thing was, the thing that reminded me of is like, if you don't need it, then how does it negatively affect you to have that there? Like, if you don't need it, okay, but it's not negatively affecting your life at all, so why the fuck do you care this hard? You know? And I feel like it's the same thing with, like, accommodations. It's like, it's really not negatively affecting you all that much and could potentially provide you a benefit, so why the fuck do you care so hard?
You know what it comes down to? And we're seeing that now, especially with the vaccines and shit. It's, do you give a shit about other people?
Yeah.
If you give a shit about other people, then you're not going to have an issue with getting the vaccine, wearing a mask, like having the TTC announce which side to fucking get off the train at.
Yeah.
But if you're not, like, if you're so pressed of them being announced that because you don't need it, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Go fuck yourself right into Lake Ontario.
Yeah, seriously.
Like, it's truly, like, nobody cares.
Yeah.
like you're one person. More people need that, and if it doesn't, like, it's funny because it's, the accommodation should be for that one person versus everybody else. It just comes down to, do you give a shit about people, or do you only give a shit about yourself?
Yeah.
And that's the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
Do you care or do you not care?
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I saw this, I can't remember the exact origin, but I think the first place I saw it was on Twitter. And I saw it a while ago. But basically the person said, I don't know how to explain to people that you should give a shit about other people.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing something like that.
I don't know how to explain to you that you should care about other people.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about the world, kind of. Like, I think there's a lot of people who do care about others, but, like, there's just so many selfish people that it's like...
But it's also people who fall into the category of they only care about the people they know.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you know, when there's stories of, you know, a woman, you know, something happening bad to a woman, and a guy, and the man's response is like, well, immediately talk about his wife or daughter or something. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't want that happening to my daughter. Okay, but what about every other fucking, like, woman or a person identified? Like, why does it only exclusively have to apply to the people you know?
Yeah.
So, like, you should care about, like, just everybody, not just, like, oh, how is this applicable to my family? So, like, you'd be totally okay if some stranger was hurt, but, like, as long as it's not your daughter, like, that's fucking messed up.
There's so many people that, they understand the concept of, like, caring for your community. They understand the concept of, like, helping your community. But for some reason, they can't expand that out on a large scale. That, like, social programs and taxes and stuff, it's basically, like, it's a community effort. But for some reason, they don't make the connection in their head. Like, that this is the same thing as, like, your neighbors getting together to accomplish a thing. It's just on a larger scale. But it's like, oh, I don't, like, personally know them, so I don't care. Or those people I don't see as people, so no. There's a lot of instances of people who will act against their own best interest if it means that someone else's life doesn't get better. Yeah. A specific example, like, there's a lot of white people who will vote against their own interests if it means, like, that they get to keeping black people down. That they would rather stay suffering than to help black people in any sort of way. And
yes,
that applies on a lot of different levels. Mm-hmm. And different groups and stuff like that. So it's just, yeah. The world kind of sucks. I mean, I try not to be too negative about it because I'm like, that's the kind of attitude that leads to apathy and leads to, like, things not getting better. Because, like, I think things can get better. It's just really difficult to envision it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we
Got off on a sidetrack.
yeah, so let's just back
Yeah,
back on track.
Let's go into favorite scenes.
Yeah. I think this is an
Okay.
appropriate time.
I did get a good laugh about with Jordy and Wes's fight.
Yeah, I thought that was solid.
With like when Jordy's like, let me tell you something, you get more action out of a good book than you'll ever see on this date, I'll guarantee it. She's not gonna waste her time on someone like you. And then Wes is like, at least I don't find my women in a holodeck.
Yeah.
That's really good. I also liked Riker goes right before he goes into the brawl at 10 Forward. Riker is walking with Worf and he goes, is it my imagination or have tempers become a little frayed in the ship lately? And then Worf goes, I hadn't noticed. And then they walk into 10 Forward where like everybody is full out fighting.
Yeah. I liked that the women were getting in on the brawl too.
Of
Yeah,
course.
it was a lot. Okay. So it was also like a little quiet moment, but Data and Picard were talking about aging and stuff, and Picard's like, Data, are you sure you want to like be human with all this aging shit? And Data's like, well, if like Sarek is so logical, why is he like letting all this shit happen? Like, because he's aged, he's getting sick. And then Picard goes, logic fails us sometimes, Data. And I was like, yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really interesting episode.
Yeah. I was curious to get your opinion as someone who's not, like, steeped in the Star Trek lore like we are, like, whether, like, what kind of impression this episode gave you.
I think I think it's definitely a heavy episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
Yes.
there wasn't, like, that's why I'll take the funny moments where I can. But, I mean, I liked it. I think like I'm starting to learn like I guess I'm starting to get used to some of the more like serious stuff because I think like the first 2 seasons just had so much like random shit that I think I got used to like the absolute batshitness of it all. So now that like we're almost done season 3 and now we've had like a few like quite serious episodes and then this one is like pretty intense, and I actually had to like it took me 2 days to watch this episode. I had to split it up just because there was like I watched I think like literally about half and then on like Wednesday and then watched the rest on Thursday. It's for context it's Saturday. But yeah, just because there was so much and I was already had written so many notes that I was like I need a break because like I'm only halfway through and everything has happened so far.
Yeah, the series definitely turns serious, more serious in season 3 and going forward.
Yes.
I like it. I mean, I guess
There's still some goofball shit. Don't you worry.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
good. I do love myself some goofball shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an interesting, especially because I can understand and like I can see that how important this character, what he means to people, because like how much like Picard and Riker sort of fanboyed at the beginning, and then when Picard was told, that like Sarek finds his career to be satisfactory, was like you could see that meant a lot to him, and just to see this character like who means so much to so many people at almost their worst, well at the moment I suppose.
Yeah.
And also like someone who's seen as like a powerful figure is now totally out of control and has no idea that he's not in control. So just like a lot of layers to this episode, so it was interesting.
That was definitely, I think, the saddest part of Sarek's story, that he had to realize in the episode, not admit, but he had to realize that he wasn't in control anymore.
It was also like I give credit to the actor because like there was like this was like a hard episode because I mean like the scene
yes.
later on when Picard finally talks to him and Sarek just keeps saying like, I'm fine, I'm healthy, I'm like super healthy, it's totally fine. And then Picard's like, do I hear anger in your voice? And then Sarek yells, it would be illogical for a Vulcan to show anger. It would be illogical. And just like that was really intense of like, and especially like this disease is the epitome, I guess like the exact opposite of a of Vulcan's like natural, you know, their way of life. Of this is just uncontrollable emotions when their whole thing is like no emotions, I guess.
Yeah.
So him being confronted with like this is what's happening, but him being in denial and showing the exact symptoms that he's been like avoiding his whole life was just really interesting. I think like it was a well-written episode. It was just heavy.
Yeah.
Yep, that's fair.
So
that's
it's
fair.
not my favorite, but I just think it was really well done.
Yeah. And I can tell you as someone who is like steeped in Star Trek lore that like when you have that background with it, this is a huge fucking deal. And this is like very impactful. And it does...
They pulled it off so respectfully.
Yeah, and it does make a huge difference that this is Sarek that's going through this.
Yes.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments is that confrontation, like, between Picard and Sarek, where Picard's like, you know, Sarek, a Vulcan, would not look away from something he did not wish to see. And he just keeps saying, like, Sarek, a Vulcan, would not, like... you know, burst out in anger. Sarek of Vulcan would not do this and that. And
yeah, he's appealing to his legacy that he's so proud of.
Yeah. And to be honest, this is just because of how I am and how uncomfortable with emotions and how cynical I am. But I found like the whole Picard experiencing his emotions thing kind of cringy.
It was a little cheesy in the way that it was done, I think.
Yeah, it's cheesy. I don't know how to react to people acting those kind of like over dramatic moments, and it just makes me uncomfortable, and so I find it cringe. But like I totally acknowledge that that's probably more me than anything actually wrong with the scene.
Yeah, I think the scene was written well, and I think that Stewart's performance is completely believable. Like, there's no part of that where I'm just like, this is silly. I don't buy that. But it's more of that seeing these intense emotions in general is definitely something that we are made to feel uncomfortable about. I don't think that's just you.
Oh yeah, I mean in real life, like when you see someone cry, especially like ugly cry, it's very awkward.
Yeah, it is awkward. And you might even find it cringy and laugh about it.
Yeah.
But we also all know what it feels like to be in that position and to be like overcome with emotion to a point where you break. You have no way to hold it back anymore. Mm-hmm. And I think that's I mean, like, Patrick Stewart forced out a tear for that.
Oh,
and it was a hard one to force out because there's
that one single tear.
I'm
Yes.
sorry, that just reminds me of during the concert where they very terribly animated Sarek's tear.
Yeah, because his face was like 100% still.
Yeah, it was a freeze frame, and
Yeah.
the effect just did not look good either.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry.
But I guess Mark Leonard, when he was hired for the role of Sarek in the first place, was not really expected to do anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, but they have drops for that. Like, you just...
I know.
Eh.
I know, but maybe they just couldn't pull it off for that particular close-up.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? Who knows? It could have been the makeup. It could have been a dozen things, a dozen reasons why they didn't go for it.
Yeah.
Like, if you were watching that on, like, a 4x3 television in the 90s, it would look fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, my other favorite moment was also that first argument between Geordi and Wesley. I don't know why, but particularly the way that Will Wheaton says, it's like, at least I'm not spending the evening with a good book like some people.
It's basically a nerd calling another nerd a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think what you mentioned, Dory, about the fight in the in 10 Forward, when you've got Riker and Worf walking towards the room, and it just immediately cuts to the fight. And yeah, I found that extremely amusing. But the part that I really liked was actually a very small inserted character moment that's quite subtle. And it was when Picard was preparing for the mind meld in what do you call it, in Sarek's quarters, in his quarters, sorry. And he's talking to Beverly about it, and she says, "I can't say I approve of this, Jean-Luc." And he replies with, "I did not expect that you would, Beverly." And he kind of like awkwardly says Beverly because he's like, "Wait, is this an official thing, or are you just concerned as a friend? What's going on?" And I found that a little cute.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did like that Beverly was there and comforting him and stuff. That was really adorable.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh yeah, when she says like when Picard has like a brief moment of lucidity and he's like, I can't stop the emotions from coming up, and she like hugs him and she says like, "Don't even try."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so sweet.
I mean, you shouldn't at that point.
Yeah. Well, you shouldn't you shouldn't suppress your emotions.
But yeah, those are my moments.
Mm-hmm. So, that leads us to predictions for the next episode. And
nice.
Ready for some goofball shit?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're looking for goofball shit. Well, next episode.
Yeah. So the next episode is called Menage a Troy.
No. What the
So would you like to hear the hint?
Or do you just want to guess from that?
Are you there?
That title has broken me. Oh my god. That's the best title I've heard now.
Yeah.
There was a Q one that was very funny earlier in the season, but this one has beaten that.
Yeah.
Menage a Troy. It's funny. Okay, wait, hold on. I need to like calm down. Okay. Yes, description, please.
All right. So, Deanna and her mother get kidnapped by a Ferengi.
That's so funny.
That's the Troy. I mean the Trois.
Oh boy. Okay.
Oh, sorry, and Riker too. Riker, Troy, and her mother get kidnapped by a Ferengi.
That's even funnier. Oh my god, my face hurts. Oh my god. Honestly, do we need a prediction on this point? Just like, oh, who cares? I just that sounds great. No, I'll do one. Okay. 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 Kidnapped by a Ferengi. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna assume that Troy's mom has gotten into some kind of shenanigans. Maybe she comes to the Enterprise with something that's valuable, because we know the Ferengi like valuable shit. But she's kind of on the run to like get it somewhere else. So like hails the Enterprise, like they happen to be going in the direction that she needs to go. But like she then needs to be like dropped off at a specific place. So like her and Troy and Riker go to bring this item to this specific place, but in like while they're down on the planet to give the thing, the Ferengi like intercept them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. No, there's nothing I could say that'll be a better thing than what you've just told me. I can't there's nothing, I can't even go off of anything because like that it's wonderful.
All right.
I cannot wait. I cannot. Yeah, my prediction is bad. I don't care. I'm done. We're going into this episode.
Okay. So, if you want to see what the hell this episode is, watch along with us and join us for the next episode of Fully Functional, a TNG podcast.
Goodbye.